The current conflict with Iran is both a physical one and a metaphysical one. On the one hand, Iran has threatened the free world, America the great Satan and Israel the small Satan. But Iran also represents evil to a certain degree. Their language, their speech, their threats of genocide, their violations of human rights, the injustices, their support of terror around the world, to a certain degree they represent the epitome of evil. And in this conflict, as the world confronts Iran, we're called upon to be able to harness our greater good, to be able to triumph over evil. And so this issue is not just one of a geopolitical one, it's not just a potentially military conflict. There's really an opportunity for the world community who have failed too many times in the past and allowed genocide and murder to occur to step up and to stop an evil, nefarious regime from perpetrating the threatened genocide that they have articulated over and over and over again. And lest any of us feel totally impotent or unable to make a difference. Every one of us can make a difference. It's very easy to sit at home and to say to yourself, well, I'm not an elected official, I don't get a vote, I'm not a diplomat, I'm not negotiating, I'm not a general, I'm not going to fight in a war. Who am I and what difference can I make? And the truth is, history is replete with incidents and stories of average individuals who raised their voice, who advocated and lobbied, and it was their influence and their power of persuasion that made a difference. Whether it was a certain man who used to own a haberdashery with Harry Truman, who is responsible for the founding of the State of Israel today, or whether many other stories, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Talmud records, of his really being responsible for the continuity of the Jewish people, when he turned to the Roman general and said, give me Yavna, give me the city of Yavna and its wise ones. And we have that opportunity to rise today and to be those voices of good, to be able to advocate and lobby for humanity and for a greater good and for justice. Every one of us have that power. The structure of the American government is such that Congress has been empowered with the opportunity to vote. And that vote is going to occur right around the time of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, a time of judgment. As we will enter the synagogue and as we will pray for the good of the world, the good of the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, for peace in Israel and around the world, Congress will have a difficult decision to make. Difficult perhaps in some people's minds, not difficult from our perspective. Because when one looks at Iran, when one looks at their support of terror around the world, when one looks at the plans that they have stated, one can see that this deal that's been cut with them, while perhaps the best deal they were willing to offer, still qualifies as a very bad deal. If anyone has any doubt what Iran wants to do, it wants to use its nuclear program not for peaceful purposes. Why would then want an end time to this deal? If all you wanted was for peaceful purposes, then you wouldn't care about having an end time. You'd retire your nuclear program. Clearly, Iran, who have a complete history of trying to fool the world over and over again and of advancing their nuclear ambition, want to continue to do so. And according to this plan, they can do so rapidly if they cheat the system, and even if they follow every single stipulation in the agreement, they can achieve their nuclear ambition in a relatively short time from now. And then it'll be too late. As a nuclear weapon faces the state of Israel, 6 million of our brothers and sisters who reside there, what will we say when we were silent, when we allowed it to happen? Now is our time to raise our voice. Now is our time to persuade and to convince and to encourage our members, our elected officials, to say no to this Iran deal and to force the world to require Iran to join a community of humanitarian nations, a community of just nations, to join the members of the world who are willing to live peacefully with one another and not to conduct the terror and not to conduct the human rights violation that they continue to do. You know, when we visit each of our elected officials and we have to bombard and we have to flood our congressmen and our senators with phone calls, encouraging and demanding that they oppose this deal and pointing out all the many flaws of this deal, of which there are so many, and you can turn to countless sources to read them. You don't need me to articulate them. But when we raise our voice and encourage our elected officials to oppose this deal, they're not the only ones who are listening. It's not only the elected officials, and it's not even only the American people, and it's not only Iran. The most important audience who will be listening to our lobbying and advocacy efforts is the Almighty Himself, the One above, who sits in His high throne and He gazes down on the world and He looks to us to see, have we learned the lessons of history? Is it lip service when we express our prayers to Him with fear for the safety and well-being not only of our brothers and sisters of Israel, but really for here in America as well, who will share the threat of a nuclear Iran? Is it simply lip service? Or are we willing to take action? Are we willing to show human initiative in order to influence our condition, in order to influence the world around us? It's not just the elected officials we're lobbying. Most significantly, we're lobbying the Almighty Himself. When Moses led the Jews out of Egypt, and they had experienced the miracles of the 10 plagues, nature was transcended and suspended as God miraculously took the Jewish people out of Egypt. They thought they had attained their freedom, their liberty. They were marching towards a better future when it all came to a standstill. They found themselves squeezed between the Egyptians in pursuit of them and the sea in front of them. And they thought, why in the world would the Master of the universe do this to us? He put us through centuries of suffering only to free us through miracles, only to have our demise at this moment, stuck between literally the rock and the hard place. And they did what they thought was the most virtuous and noble thing to do, what they had been taught to do. They turned to God and they poured out their hearts in prayer. They cried out to the Almighty, the Bible tells us. And isn't that, after all, the appropriate thing? God heard their prayers in Egypt, and Moses and Aaron had been trying to encourage the people in their faith of God and their prayer towards God. Wasn't the right response, when stuck in an impossible situation, to simply turn with deep and profound faith to the Almighty and express our utter reliance and dependence on Him? And yet God turns to Moses and He says, tell the people, stop praying and start walking. Daber al b'nei Yisrael v'yiso. Stop praying. Why are they praying? Lama titzakilai. Why are they praying? Stop praying and start walking. Why would God say that? Isn't prayer exactly what He wanted of them? We learn from here a very important lesson, that we pray in two forms. We pray with our words and we pray with our actions. We pray with our lips when we tell God what we want. But when God truly wants to measure whether we mean what we say, He evaluates and measures us based on our actions, not our words alone. He wants to see our initiative. He wants to see our efforts. He wants to see just how badly we care. And so God responds and says, I heard you. Stop praying. Start walking. Let's see if you're willing to take the initiative to show your faith in me and to be my partner in bringing this reality into the world. And in this very moment, as Iran continues to threaten, in this pivotal moment in human history and at the cusp of human destiny, this is our test, this is our chance, not just to offer lip service, not just to pray to God or the lip service of talking to one another or posting articles on Facebook or bemoaning the threat of the world today. This is our opportunity to lobby our elected officials. Call your senator, call your congressman, call senators and congressmen across the country. Flood and bombard them because the numbers of calls they get matter. Our congressman, who's a dear friend of mine, told me, even when he knows the position he'll take on something, nevertheless, the count that's taken in his office of how many calls he got for each side of the issue, they matter. They matter. So even if you think someone has decided, flood their office with phone calls, because remember, not only is the elected official listening, the Almighty Himself is being lobbied, and we need Him to answer in our favor. Thank you.